Thank you, Mari. Good morning, everyone. How is everybody? Yay. Well, it's our joy to be here with all of you. I'm going to begin by reading from Whispers from Eternity. This is Yogananda's book of prayer, demands, and poems. And this is a beautiful poem. It's called God's Boatman. I want to ply my boat many times across the gulf after death and return to Earth's shores from my home in space. I want to load my boat with all those waiting, thirsty ones who have been left behind, that I may carry them to the opalescent pool of iridescent joy. There where my Father distributes his all-desire-quenching liquid peace. Oh, and I will come back again and again, crossing a million crags of suffering. With bleeding feet I will come, if need be 1,000,000,000 times, as long as I know that one stray brother is left behind. I want thee, O God, that I may give thee to all. I want salvation, that I may give it to all. Free me then, O Lord, from the bondage of this body, that I may show others how they too can free themselves. I want thine everlasting happiness, but I want also to share it with others, that all my brothers may find the way to happiness forever and forever in thee. This is probably one of Yogananda's most beautiful poems, and the importance that he puts on us coming back and wanting him. As Daiva was saying earlier, when we want God more than anything, and God's not going to force us to come to him or to love him, and he's going to wait, as his promise here, he's going to wait as long as he needs to, as long as one stray brother, one stray sister, one stray anybody is left behind. He will wait for us. What a beautiful promise we have. We are celebrating this weekend the anniversary of Swami's discipleship, and we have a beautiful altar here. Thank you to the altar and flower Devas this weekend. I was remembering a story of Swami Kriyananda. He's the founder of Ananda, has written many books, music, lectured all around the world. I remember a story from the 80s when he found out that attendance at Sunday service was down. And instead of making a rule that everybody had to come to service, he decided that he was going to do the service for a while to help magnetize it. And it's such a beautiful example of how he never pushed from below, but he always aspired from above. That's how he lived his life. There's another story that Nayaswami Devi has told us repeatedly. It was one morning and they were all kind of waking up and getting ready for the day, and they're kind of sleepy-eyed and bushy-tailed or whatever. And then in walks Swamiji, Swami Kriyananda, and he says, "Good morning, great souls." And they're all looking around. Who is he talking to? And they realize he's talking to them. Always aspiring from the highest point, not the lowest. That's what our masters, that's what the great masters do, that's what the saints do, that's what God does, always inspiring from the highest point. That's what the spiritual path is about. That's what our meditation technique of Kriya Yoga, we're lifting the energy up the spine to the higher chakras, to the higher inspiration, so we can feel for that expression of God's love on a deeper level. It's all we're doing, is trying to feel for ourselves from that highest point. I was thinking of the evolution of the soul and how it goes from its very beginning, and then it begins to awaken and realizes it has this body, and then it realizes it has this mind and it has this will. What's the famous line? "I don't want to, you can't make me." There's a wonderful story of a sea captain, and it was pitch black. When he was out in the sea and he sees a light dead ahead on a collision course with his ship. So he signals the other ship and he says, "Change your course 10 degrees east." And then the light signals back, "Change your course 10 degrees west." The captain starts to get a little angry and he says, "I'm a Navy captain. Change your course, sir." And the other person replies, I'm a seaman, second class, comes the reply. Change your course, sir. Infuriated, the captain sends back, I'm a battleship. I'm not changing course. And there's one last reply, I'm a lighthouse. It's your call. Sounds familiar? And this goes on for how long does it go on? Over and over and over. When do we really want God? When do we really want those higher aspirations? And then back to that beautiful poem, it's okay also how long it takes because God's there waiting for us. What a promise He's given us. Anandamoy Ma, the great saint, said we have one choice, and that's to think of God or not think of God. What are we going to choose? God or not? Pepsi or what was it, Coca-Cola? Or, what are we going to think of? Are we going to think of God or not? There was a young man that went up to the great saint Ramakrishna, and he says, I want to see God now. And Ramakrishna said, okay, but let's go first to the river Ganges and take a bath. And I was like, okay. Follows him down to the river, and he says, okay, I want you to dunk, I want you to go under the water. And as he goes under the water, Ramakrishna holds him under the water. He doesn't let him come up, and he just intuits to the last second, and then he lets him come up, and he's just gasping for air. And he's like, what were you thinking when you were down there under the water? Were you thinking of your position? Were you thinking of your wife? I hope he was. No. Were you thinking of your children? Were you thinking of your money? What were you thinking of? He said, I was thinking I only want a gasp. I wanted a gasp of air. And he says, when you want God that desperately, then you will see Him. I want only Thee, Lord. I want only Thee. And then the blessings of this path is, we always say, Yogananda says the spiritual path is 25% of our effort, but it's 100% of that 25%. Are we going to think of Him in all the moments? And we have all these tools because it's hard to remember God in all the moments. It's hard. We get caught up in our life and at work and getting to work on time and getting our deadlines done. And then before you know it, it's 5 o'clock. Did I think of God? I have a friend who has something on her cell phone and it goes off every hour. There's this just gentle little gong. And it's just like very gentle. And I said, what's that? And she said, it's her reminder to think of God. And it's amazing. I've been with her. Sometimes our meetings go on longer than an hour. And then, you hear it again. It's like, that's right. Am I thinking of God? It doesn't mean I let go of all my other duties, but am I thinking of Spirit? Am I thinking those higher thoughts when I'm in a meeting? Am I trying to be kind and patient? Am I really listening? Or am I imposing my own ego, my own will in what I'm doing? And so, the reminder today, Swami Kriyananda's discipleship, this is how he lived his life. He dedicated his life in this way. Always thought of God. Always did everything with God in mind. Always paused to reflect. And so here is an opportunity, a reminder for us to live in this way, to always think of God, always in everything that we're doing. And remembering the spiritual, again, that spiritual path, 25% is our effort, but the other 75% is we have God and Guru on our side. 50% the grace of God, 25% the Guru's grace. If you talk about football, those are good odds. We've got quite the team behind us, remembering that, remembering they're helping us. And if we falter, just get back up. The next moment, every moment's a new opportunity, remembering to live in that light and love. So Diva will also be sharing this morning, but it's a joy to be here with all of you this morning. So thank you.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? Good. There was a particularly obtuse individual in Ananda village many years ago. Very sincere, but very certain of that their own opinion of how things worked was right. And at one point, Swami noted that they had a wont of iron. I remember the moment that I first really discovered that I did not know where happiness comes from. I really realized that I was going to have a very nice life. I talked about this a little bit at the earlier service. I was going to have a very nice life and end up at the end of it just as empty at my center as I was at that moment. And it was a striking moment because I thought, where do I go from here? And because the call was sincere, it wasn't very long before I received a copy of the autobiography of a yogi, and I opened it up and I went, whoa, dude, this guy knows, for the first time in my life, I saw a vibration and understanding that fulfilled all of the aspiration of my heart. I'd watched for a long time different individuals and their wholeness. Whenever I saw anybody who really radiated confidence and strength and wholeness in a given environment, because I could identify what it looked like, but invariably I saw that it would fade in other circumstances. And I thought, well, that's not it. That's part of it, but that's not it. In the autobiography of a yogi, I saw that without exception, throughout every condition of life, that same vibration, that same wholeness was there. That's it. I mean, there's a lot of weird things in there that just didn't make sense to me, with people appearing and disappearing on page 8 and, just all kinds of things that were not my common experience, but I knew that it was that. And then within a year or so, I had the fortune to meet Swami Kriyananda. And I've spoken to this. I spoke to it at Spiritual Renewal Week. I spoke to it at Swami Kriyananda's celebration of his discipleship, which is why we're all here. It's a direct extension, a direct line from that moment to where we are right now, because if he hadn't done that, there'd be an Ananda. We wouldn't be here together. I met him, and when I first met him, I was expecting, look at the masters, read the autobiography of a yogi. We're talking orange-robed swamis. He came out in a Hawaiian shirt, and he talked for an hour and a half about Hawaii, and I thought, I couldn't connect the dots. So there was a short time later that I received the gift of the path, Swami Kriyananda's autobiography, and I went, oh my God, that's who he is. The path to awakening is not what we think it is. It's beyond our assertions. It's beyond our presumptions. And unless we have the wisdom to open ourselves to the guidance of those who have the experience that we're seeking, we just flounder. We're in a very odd time. We're in a very odd time on this planet. I salute every person in this room, because there are so many other places you could be. You could be out at the cafes this morning. You could be sitting at home reading your Sunday paper. You could be out for a run or a walk or hanging out with the dog or gathering with your friends. Portland is a delightful place to live. It's a charming place to live. It's so satisfying on so many levels, and none of them last. That's the problem. That's where wisdom steps in. None of it lasts. There's nothing wrong with any of it. So the gift of the masters, they feel the call of our hearts. And it's the divine response to the call of our hearts that brings these masters and souls like Swami Kriyananda into this world and then into our lives. But it's through our receptivity, it's through the wisdom pull of our receptivity that we are helped. And we have to take little steps. Again, I'll go back to that chant, I want only thee, Lord. Well, yeah, okay. We do, every one of us. We want that joy. We want only that joy, that wholeness. But until we want it only in the way that it comes, we're stuck. Because if we put our time and energy into things that don't last, we become conditioned to looking for happiness and fulfillment in things that aren't going to sustain us. And then when they go away, gradually the powers of our youth fade, and the power to recover and try one more experiment just disappears. And we end up with an empty cup. We end up with whatever's inside. Because at the end of the day, the body goes, the mind goes, the heart goes, everything cognition as we know it and act on it goes, our power to be useful in this world outwardly goes, and if we haven't filled up in stillness, we don't know how to feel and experience it. It's, the scriptures say, if you don't seek God in the springtime of your life, in the summer of your life, he won't be there in the winter. Not because God isn't omnipresent, but because we don't know how to tune into it. We don't know how to listen. And we make so many things so important. I was at the village. I moved to Ananda Village because I wanted to follow. I wanted to be around others who also had the wisdom to know that they didn't know. And they were going to follow daily these practices and these teachings and try and keep tuning in and support each other. So I moved to the village, and then I was there for several years. I never had a government job. I was always a builder. I was always out serving. I was always out in the field interacting with others. And it became a power. I realized that a lot of the real power in life isn't from being cloistered only, but from being cloistered in a way that you fill up and then to present, allow that to flow through as a channel. So I did that, and then I was offered a chance to go to Palo Alto and help start the second community, but the first urban community. And I did it as a builder, so I went there. That was great, and then we got that 2.5 years into its vitality, and I was asked to come help in Portland. So I came up to Portland, and I thought I was going to start a builders guild, because I was a builders guild here. And within I got my license, but in a matter of months, I was asked to run the cafe. I was run the restaurant that we had owned. I thought, well, that's very bizarre. Okay, because one of the things we learn is that saying yes to life, yes to whatever life brings us, is God's opportunity. Our receptivity to what he presents opens the door for the experiences that will set us free. Remember in the purification service, we say, I seek purification by the grace of God, and we respond. The Master says, open your heart to me, and I will enter and take charge of your life. Because we have to go to places that we wouldn't ordinarily go, to have experiences that we wouldn't normally want to have, because our understanding of joy is too limited. We have to be taken to places we don't want to go to discover that it's everywhere. It's limitless. There are no conditions on it. So I will take charge of your life. So anyway, he said, run the restaurant. So I ran the restaurant. And I was doing pretty well, but I hit a karmic block. I just couldn't move forward. And I wasn't in a strong enough environment. And after about 3.5 years, I got put on factory recall. And I got invited. I didn't get coerced. I got invited back to the village. But my welcome here was no longer operative. And I remember saying yes, of course. But everything changed. Everything that I valued, everything I was vested in just disappeared. I was no longer resistant to that process because I knew that I didn't know. But the years intervening before coming back here were filled with things that were unexpected. And the pathway to this position were completely not obvious. I spent a year building, under impossible circumstances, what is now the center at the meditation retreat. I then went out and worked at another restaurant and store for 5.5 years. I was told that'll be about a year. And it turned into 5.5 years. And there were miracles associated with that because I cooperated. And then I ended up, when we sold that, Ananda sold that, I ended up starting my own construction company. And that's what gave a lot of the resource and power that allowed us to come up here and work with what's here. All very circuitous, all very far out there, but what was put in front of me, what was there to be done. But I've always made sure that I kept myself in the environment that was God reminding. That took all of these and moved the understanding toward that experience. It's easy to do the same things and have a very worldly experience and a very, at the end of it, there's nothing you can do that's divine. There's nothing you can do that's divine. Being in these robes is not different than painting. It's not different than brain surgery. It's not different than cleaning the toilets. It's not different than helping somebody on the street. There's absolutely nothing that's different unless you make it different by your attunement and receptivity. And often being out in service in the world, I didn't say living in the world, being in service in the world, is more powerful than being cloistered. But it only in this time, in this peculiar time, when there's so much pull outward, because it's an age of energy and delight and entertainment, it's only if we can keep ourselves grounded, and I cannot stress enough the power of community as a place of living to keep us grounded in our meditations, in our service, in our remembrance throughout the days. You know, it's interesting, I've also found, and I'll end with this in just a moment or two, but I've also found that if you're really sincere, if you're really, really sincere that you want happiness, forget wanting only God. Everybody knows they only want happiness. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, I am determined today to be as miserable as I possibly can. Anybody? Of course not. Everybody's seeking that. That's God. God is joy. If you're really serious, God will take your earnestness and respect it, and take you places, often very vigorously, that you didn't want to go. It will change your life, often in ways that you wouldn't have it, so that you can have experiences that open you to that joy, open each one of us to that flow. I was walking, this is the last story. We were back at the village where my own Ananda village, where my own spiritual awakening started on this path, really dynamically, because I was in the environment. And I had just helped give a Kriya Yoga initiation. It was Spiritual Renewal Week about a month ago, whatever it was. And I was walking back from the temple with a very dear friend afterwards. He's a young man. And I've known him now for 11 years. And he came from a charismatic Christian family. It's my son-in-law, so it's very close. He had been at the Kriya. It was his second Kriya initiation. And he came to it very slowly. He came to it very honestly. And the 10 years that I've known him have been really just, he saw in our daughter something, both individually but also in a larger way that he didn't understand but he knew was good. He saw her radiance, her strength, her wholeness. And he tried to understand that, reconciling that with the weirdness of this path by charismatic Christian terms, and gradually grew into it, but he wouldn't allow himself, thank God, he wouldn't allow himself to be convinced without his own experience. And he took it very slowly. But we're walking back from Kriya. After 10 years, he's received Kriya. And it was a balmy evening. Stars were out, no moon. We're walking across the path of this enormous meadow, and just the heavens opened up. And just this endless sense of joy and wholeness and beauty and completeness from deep inside each one of us. And you just feel it radiating from each of us. And I just asked him, I said, isn't it nice once you've swallowed the Kool-Aid, once you've stopped insisting that you know better than this, insisting that something lesser is more meaningful. And he just very quietly, he just said, it's nice when the mind finally shuts up. When we become still enough that something else, something else, has a chance to ignite within us and fill us. It was an eternal moment. They say at the end of life, the only things you'll remember are the moments when you felt his presence. And that is wisdom. God never coerces, but he invites. And if you're earnest, he'll invite you vividly into a whole other story. And you'll give up many things that you think are so important, so precious, and so secure and safe and entertaining. And what you'll get instead is everything you ever wanted. Let's take a moment of silence.